If you look at the people who are dominating on TikTok right now, like the whole blueprint is pretty transparent and obvious if you just study them for 5 seconds. It's obvious what needs to happen.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 304, and we're going to be talking about getting your music heard online and the methods that will get you there and how you handle the process of using those methods. Maybe a little bit of a mindset episode today. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is my co-pilot, Circa. Cirque, what's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, friend. Excited to get into it today.
Me too, man. We've been talking a lot about organic social media on the podcast for like the last quarter. And we've been talking about strategies for planning your content and shooting your content and producing great performance videos. And we've been spending a lot of time on that, I think, because it's really important. You know, we've seen a kind of a full circle moment to the opportunity of organic social, probably more than we have in quite a number of years. And I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with that kind of work. And so that's what I wanted to talk about on today's show, was how once you've got the content, what do you do with your successes and your failures? And probably most importantly, what do you do with the things that feel like failing? You know, we could talk about what those mean and how to combat them, because I think that that's really important to recontextualize activity on social media and posting cadences on social media and what it actually means to grow an audience and have people paying attention to you.
Yeah. You know, this is kind of following on from our 300th episode where we kind of talked about the changing dynamics of organic social versus paid social. And so I think it'll be a nice deep dive there.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I want to kick it off and talk about organic social and just kind of give a quick recap of what we've been talking about. There's a huge opportunity right now with organic social media, in particular with the discovery of music for artists and bands on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, and in particular, Instagram Reels. I think that's kind of indisputable. We see it all day, every day. If you're a music fan, along with being an artist, a musician in a band, whatever persuasion you fall under, if you're a music fan, you hang out on those platforms at all, you're probably being influenced to discover new music on those platforms, I would imagine. I know I am.
Yeah. I would say the main way that music culture is cycling right now is on TikTok. Like it's kind of not even a question.
Yeah, for sure. TikTok is a great place to discover music, and it's a great place to get your music heard. That's kind of the main thesis that we've been talking about on, recent episodes of the show. And we've talked about a roadmap for how to build up content and how to build up ideas and where to get inspiration. And we've talked plenty about that. We'll link back to those episodes in the show notes, specifically when Cirque gave kind of a whole roadmap of how to train TikTok to show you the type of content that inspires you, and then how to find sets and settings and how you pick out your songs and the sections of your songs and how you build a content calendar based on the things that inspire you or influence you. We've gone over that in previous episodes. And what I wanted to talk about a little bit in this episode was the slog that some artists feel once they actually start getting into trying to get out there with their music and actually get heard, and using organic social to do it, because it can feel really discouraging. I was recently talking with a friend of mine who was like, yeah, man, no matter what I do, like I feel like I've got great ideas. I've been putting great content together. I'm working on it. And, it's getting some momentum, but it's slow moving for me. And some days that doesn't feel super motivating to keep up with. And so that was what I wanted to bring to the show today, was a little bit of a mindset reset or a reframing of the idea of social media content. The thought that came to my mind that I wanted to bring to the show today was, when you're getting into the habit of a posting cadence, we've talked about this idea of disposable content on the platform, right? And what that means and how the attention spans are so short that you can reuse content, repurpose content, and it doesn't necessarily matter if something does super well one day. It doesn't matter. Just on to the next thing. But that's not an easy pill to swallow, I don't think. And so to reframe even a bit further, I would encourage artists to think about their posting habits on social media like how they would opportunities for playing live. For example, if you were to go to a coffee shop and play your music for an open mic and there was 50 people there, that's 50 people that heard you for the very first time, maybe. Or maybe some of them were a mixed bag. You had 25 people that had never heard you before and 20 of your friends and 5 people that were, your family members that were going to be there no matter what. You've got a mixed bag, but if you start to think about social media in that way, it's okay, I did a thing and there was an audience for it. There was 100 people in the coffee shop. There was 100 people that watched my video that I posted yesterday. How do I then move on to create something better? Or how do I keep the consistency going so that every time I do this, there is a bit more? Or even if there's a bit less, you can still then reframe to, okay, I was playing in a park and 15 people happened to be jogging by and they saw me play, heard my music, whatever it might be. I think when we situate social media and audiences in terms of the things that we do real life as artists, it makes it way more palatable when things feel underwhelming as far as the result.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's also like we have indies of all different ages in our community. And I think, one thing is that like I would say a majority of the indies that we work with are not necessarily young anymore. They're not all older, but starting to get into that age where one gets married and has kids, like towards that age. And I think that like the music industry and becoming an artist is a young person's game because the upside becomes less and less attractive as you get more and more desensitized to upside. I don't know about you, but I came up like as a delinquent, broken home youth, dysfunctional family kind of youth. And my prospects for any upside were quite limited, but I had this talent. And so it was like, okay, there's a vehicle for me to participate in upside. And that's what made me want to be an artist. And as you get older, you get desensitized to the very small amounts of money that one can make even as a reasonably successful artist if you're not participating in like offering products. And so then you look at this challenge of consistently posting on social media and it's like that's too much of a hassle for me to participate in X upside.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. But I think this framework that you've outlined of like imagining it like real people, it's not just a meme. It's not just like a thing people say. It's really the only way to get excited again about doing what is required right now to grow a fan base. Because I know that if I can go down to Will's Pub here in Orlando and there's 100 people there to see me play, I'm not only excited to do it, but I'm ready to put on a show for them. Like there's an energy to my performance and my intention going into that I might not have creating a piece of social media content. So there's like a social upside that you sort of need to focus on above the monetary upside so that you can then build towards that monetary upside. I hope that makes sense.
That definitely makes sense, and I totally agree. Actually, I have an interesting personal anecdote kind of that falls in line with that I think is really interesting and connected here. When I put out a single a handful of months ago now for myself, the single is called Keep Me Warm, and it was the first time that I had actually posted on TikTok for my artist music, and I wasn't really expecting much of anything at all. So I went in with very, very like bottom floor expectations. But there was one comment. There was a handful of comments that came in from total strangers. But there was one comment that someone was like, "Can I get this lyric?" And it was one of my lyrics tattooed on myself. And I was like, "Holy shit. This person has never heard of me before, probably has never heard my music before, and they're saying this? I'm totally new to TikTok." And they've probably seen this video maybe twice if I'm lucky. Like this was the second time that I posted it, I think. And that was like a social moment for me that it put the social back in social media for a hot second. And there was that excitement of like, wow, this feels akin to if somebody came up to me at a coffee shop or in a venue or an open mic or a pub, whatever, and said, I really like what you do. There was this social excitement that came with it. And I think that you're right in saying that if we can reframe how we approach posting on social media and interacting with people on social media in that same way that we would in real life, it can really do wonders for like the desire to do it and taking away the feeling of it just being a hassle and a slog.
Yeah, yeah. It's completely necessary. I think that especially like also as you get past like 20 years old, not only do you get desensitized to monetary upside, you get desensitized to social upside. So young people really have everything stacked in their favor to make compelling content and grow their fan base, because there is this carrot dangling of like, I could be paid to make music at a time when they can't imagine themselves being paid to do anything very well. And so that's there. But then there's immediate social capital in putting out content because all of their peers are on the network and are watching content. And so the better they do at that, the better their local social upside is. And I think like, and I'm just speaking for the folks, you know, like out of college, right? Or even in their 30s, like myself, you need to sort of psyop yourself into, you know, how you're going to make it through that slog, because you don't have those incentives in place. And Freakonomics taught us that incentives matter. And so you need to figure out what your incentive is going to be. And I found that stick to itedness, like just sheer determination, ends up being like pretty poor, inconsistent incentive.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult to get rolling. Once it's rolling, yes, like you have that momentum if you can make it a habit, but it's so rare. Like, how many times have you tried to start something like a diet or a new habit or a routine that failed? Like, if it does stick, they can be very long lasting, but so many more don't stick.
Yeah. It's the New Year's resolution conundrum, you know?
Yeah. And you only really think about the ones that do stick. So I would say, like, yeah, if you can sit down for a moment, you know, spend 10 minutes sitting down and thinking through, like, what is my incentive here? Because I'll tell you what, it's never been clearer that this is what is required. Consistently posting, not just posting, not just like making vids to your songs as a matter of like a chore, but actually like being incentivized and excited to create a banger post, create banger content, even think of your content before you write the song, as we said in a previous episode. It's what you need to climb the ranks in what is now like a very TikTok heavy discovery modality. Like, that's how people discover. That's especially how young people discover music now. And there's no point in us like hemming and hawing about it. Like, it's true. And if you look at the people who are dominating on TikTok right now, like the whole blueprint is pretty transparent and obvious. If you just study them for 5 seconds, it's obvious what needs to happen. So that's insofar as you want to make a living off of music, is like step one, build a fan base. Step two, monetize. Okay. Step one, how do you build a fan base? It's all on vertical video social right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, like something we touched on in a previous episode that I think is worth kind of retreading a little bit here is like the difference between working the organic social mode of marketing and the paid ads mode of growth. And I think for the purpose of this episode, I don't want to go and say that one is more important than the other, because that's not particularly the argument here. But what I will say is you think about organic social and it's like taking a running a marathon or a bike ride to your destination, right? And paid ads, spending money on traffic to get your content in front of people is like taking a plane. However, what you need for all of them is the ability to navigate. And here, in this instance, right now, especially, navigation, your ability to create content that will resonate with people and that you can do consistently, that's your navigation system. And it's much safer to learn how to navigate and steer when you're running or riding a bike than when you're getting on a plane and, you know, piloting it. And that's why I think there's such a big opportunity here with organic social, because we're now once again in a place where not only can you learn how to create content and put out content, you can reach an audience again in a way that truly makes a dent in discovery. And then you can take it to paid traffic where, 4 years ago, we weren't necessarily in a place like that quite as much. And so we're at kind of this key moment, but I wanted to recontextualize organic social and paid social once again in just kind of a different frame of content is the system of navigation, and you need that, and you need to be able to do it well. And it's smart to be able to do it well before you ramp up a bunch of budget and rack up your expenses on ads before you really know what you're doing and who you're doing it for.
Yeah, I'd say furthermore, like just maybe like pouring some cold water on our community a little bit is that like it's not just enough that you make sufficient content to start attracting attention. It should be the case that this is a fundamental, a primitive skill for you, because knowing how to attract attention with content is sort of required at every step now.
Yeah, dude, that's so true.
So you're doing a single release. It's like, great. The single, no matter how good it is, no matter how much of a quote unquote hit it is, literally will not move without the right content. Infinitely more valuable than a great song hook right now is a great TikTok hook, right?
Yeah.
And when I say hook, to contextualize it, I just mean like either something about the video in its first 3 seconds that makes it obvious to me like what the payoff is going to be, or text on the screen that that teases that payoff. So it's a lot like a headline in a direct sales letter. Like it's what's going to make me keep watching or keep reading.
Right.
A great example is that one I gave on a previous episode. This kid thought up a piece of content where he was going to write on a piece of cardboard, if you're having a bad day, sit down. And he goes out to a public place and puts it there where there's lots of foot traffic. And so someone will sit down, he'll sing them a song to make their day better. And he didn't have the song yet. He just had that idea. If you put that sign out in the first 3 seconds, I read the sign, and now I have to sit and watch if someone sits down, and then what's going to happen thereafter. So immediately the rest of the video is in my frame of mind before like 3 seconds is up.
Yeah.
And that's what a hook is.
Right.
So it's going to make me stay. I'm not just going to scroll by because I want to see what's going to happen. And hooks actually like deteriorate over time as people copy them because that disappears. I already know what's going to happen in this video because I've seen it before. So much more important than a great song hook is that hook. And then, so you need it to build a fan base. You need it to get attention around a single, is to have content that has that kind of a hook. And then like you need those types of hooks when you go to run a promotion, like an album launch, a sale, sign up for your email list, your text list, whatever it is. Content is what's going to drive that. And so, and certainly the biggest artists, the biggest rising artists of today, whether it's a story or a 60-second reel or TikTok, whatever it is, they have an angle to it. They're brilliant at coming up with these angles, whether it be like, a silly prop or costume item, whether it be the sign, whether, whatever it is, that's their chief artistic firepower, right?
Yeah. I can give an example at the sales level from a client of ours a while ago. We ran a sale. It was for an offer, actually. It wasn't a sale. It was just a sales funnel. But one of the ads that we were running was essentially, the hook was, it wasn't these words exactly, but it was essentially the concept was, we're pretty sure this is going to get us canceled. Or if this doesn't get us canceled, nothing will. And it worked really well. It grabbed people's attention enough to pull them in to see what is it? I want to know about this. I know who this person is. What are they talking about here?
Yeah. And it's like the common retort to sort of that statement of like, this is what's required now, is like, I don't want to. And so much so that like, I don't want to might mean I don't want to create a monetized artistic career.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's completely fine. There's only something wrong if you do want that, but you're just unwilling to like do this thing. That's the common retort. And I'll say that like, I can't blame you, because I guess like for someone like our client, Dave Pettigrew, who's been with us since the beginning of IndieX, it was worth it. He had a very high paying engineering job, I believe.
He was in sync licensing, music supervision.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he was an engineer. Really well paid there, like comfy, but eventually was able to go full-time music off of the back of building his fan base. So I'm not here to say that like it's not worth it. It very much is. It just depends on where you're at in your life. But just to say that like, yeah, it is what's required, especially if you're starting from zero today. I would say in Dave's case, like he doesn't actually need the hooks and the content like we just described.
They can be softer, and you can find that. You can find what I guess that's worth saying here is you can find what works for you. I don't think it's binary between like really bad at making hooks in your marketing and really, really great at it to the point where it, might appear clickbaity or whatever. Like a marketer would be like, oh yeah, that's really good. Like there's middle grounds on this spectrum. And I think in my experience, you grow into them, and it's almost like you taste the medicine a little bit, and you're like, oh, well, I tried this, and it was like within my comfort zone, so I'm going to take it a little bit further, and I'm going to take it a little bit further, and you keep pushing the envelope, and that's how people gradually find themselves into a place where they're happy about content creation and happy about marketing, and they get excited about it. I was actually just having a conversation with one of our clients at the agency yesterday, and they were like, hey dude, just so you know, like we're having a big like pivot meeting at the beginning of the year with our manager and the rest of the band, and we're kind of going to be discussing things. And I was like, okay, like what does that mean? Obviously, like I'm scratching my head being like, what are they going to be talking about here? And they're like, we really just need to get happy again about doing this thing, about making the content, about getting up and doing the work, because it doesn't feel like we have been, and we think it comes off that way now. And I was like, man, light bulb moment for you guys to be like, oh man, like we're not liking where we're at, and we know it's because of a few factors of where we're at, of what we have going on in our career right now in our business. In particular, they've been just hauled up in the studio working on music for a really long time, and they haven't released anything. And so in doing that, they felt pent up and burned out, and they're like, oh, what's the point? And so now they're like, no, we need to reset and be stoked about what we were doing again and be excited about, doing this project. And I think that's sometimes what we need to be able to do when it comes to social in general. Like they were talking, way bigger picture about anything in their music business. But if we zoom back in on the topic at hand, social media, right? And putting content out and making content, you have to be able to reset into happiness. And that's why I wanted to bring the framework of like recontextualizing your results in the same way that you would look at a gig, in the same way that you would look at playing music out. Man, like I can think of nights where as a teenager, like I would go out on the boardwalk with my guitar with like my best friend and my brother, and we would play music and just stand around, and like the thrill of people coming up to us and talking was enough to make it like, this is a cool thing worth doing. And then there would be the nights where it would rain and there'd be, one or two people, and then we'd go home and it would be like, all right, well, like we'll get up and do it again tomorrow. And I think if you can shift back into that sort of mode, I'll call it like an adolescent excitement, even about just doing it.
Yeah.
I think it can change the game for you, or at least put you on a path where playing the game is fun again.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely different today, like with this like perennially online culture that we have, because there's something quite visceral and exciting about playing directly in front of people. It's like nerve-wracking, and those nerves can often propel a better performance. And so it's just about trying to manifest that feeling when going to create one-to-many content. Starting off with a great idea for how you're going to get people like to watch what your hook's going to be, that can make it a lot less nerve-wracking when you're creating it. But then just like imagining all the people who will see it, even if it's just 100, imagining them in front of you, like, can be a great little hack, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same way that when you think about creating, like, I go back to thinking about, like, oh, creating a music video, your first music video, or playing your first show. Think about the people that you hope will be there and envision that, and then do it. Do the thing. What's interesting is, like, and we could probably explore like the different types of social content for a while, but like one thing that I've often found is like the live nature of going live on social, that does shortcut you a little bit to the live performance in person feel and an emotional weight that carries, where you get into it and the emotions are charged up and the adrenaline is there, and maybe you black out doing it and then you watch it later and you're like, oh yeah, that was sick, I did a good job. I think when you're recording yourself, it's a bit harder to shortcut into that.
Yeah, for sure.
But hopefully this gives you guys a little bit of a reframing or a new way to think about social media, especially if you're in a place where, like Cirque was saying, it feels like a hassle to you, or there's just not as much social or monetary upside to it right now. Hopefully thinking about it this way, in levels. Think about busking on the street and meeting people. Think about being in a coffee shop and meeting people. Think about being in a venue that you wanted to play and meeting people. Think about playing an arena and meeting people, and all of those varieties of numbers that can come in, and then gauge your social accordingly, gauge your post accordingly, your reactions, the engagement you get, and then keep going. I think that if you can think about it that way, it'll put you in a much better headspace to keep going and not put you in the place of, just brute force attacking it and hoping that carries you through.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys dug this. This was a fun episode. Thanks, Cirque.
It's my pleasure, sir.
If you guys dug this, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. It helps if you like the show, or even if you don't like the show, leave us a review. Let us know what you'd like to hear us talk about, and that helps us get it out to more indies like you. So thank you guys, as always, for listening. We'll catch you next time on Creative Juice. Peace out.